Dr. Parmar, I would like to welcome you. Please take the floor.
Thank you so much, and very good morning, namaste, sat sri akal, and dobrim otram to all of you. It's a great pleasure to have and privilege to have been invited to talk on this very special forum, which is not my industry, but something which is very close to my heart. Energy, conservation of energy, pollution is something which is encompassing the entire globe and is so very dear to us and the future generations of ours. And we have a responsibility to perform. I'm not one of the research speakers here. Mine is an offbeat kind of a topic, and I'm sure you will find this interesting as a different kind of a perspective to the energy discussion that we are having. What I'm going to be talking to you about is application of renewable energy sources and how does it relate to the world, and also give you an Indian perspective. Let me start by talking about energy and the importance of energy. Nothing in life can happen without a breath, and nothing in life can happen without energy. There has to be a power source, an energy source to drive any activity or any life form. Now, whether it's a vehicle, you need the petrol and the diesel and the gas. Whether it is a human being or animals, you need to be able to breathe, and therefore energy source is so very important. And with that background, let's move to the sources of energy, which all of us know about. There are basically two sources of energy as known to us, the non-renewable and the renewable. So I'll just quickly go through that. Non-renewable sources of energy are petroleum, hydrocarbon, gas liquids, natural gas, nuclear energy, and we also have now the interesting area of renewable energy sources, which are solar energy, geothermal energy, wind, biomass, and hydropower. Now, we all know what non-renewable energy sources mean. They mean that their supplies are limited to the amounts that we can mine or extract from the earth. Now, whether it is coal, natural gas, or petroleum, which are formed over thousands of years of buried remains of sea plants, animals, and the living beings. And hence, they are also known as fossil fuels. We also have the later source of energy, which is non-renewable nuclear energy, which gets produced from uranium, which is again a non-renewable energy source. And all of them have been the basic source of energy to human beings for many, many centuries. Now, for the last half a century or so, there's been a growing interest on renewable energy sources, which are often referred to as clean energy sources or natural sources, because they are processes which are continuously and constantly replenished, and therefore they are known as renewable energy sources. Now, sun is permanent to the universe, and therefore we get solar energy from that. Heat inside the earth is permanent as long as earth is there, and we call that geothermal energy. Wind is so essential to our living. So wherever there is wind, we can generate wind energy. Plants will be there, plants will die, and biomass energy can be produced. It's been done traditionally across the continents. And we also have water, which is a lifeline of human beings and animals. And therefore, we have hydro power or hydroelectric power. So these are the renewable energy sources. Now, what are the pros and cons of the various energy sources? Let's start with non-renewable energies. They're definitely a positive. They have been abundant. We have been using them for centuries, but it is diminishing. Because of the advancement in technology, they have today become affordable, whether it's petrol, gas, or diesel, or any other source. For example, oil and diesel are still good choices for powering vehicles. We don't have other good choices as of now, and therefore we call them relatively cost effective. They are easier to produce and use because we have got used to and we have evolved ourselves as a technology, tried and tested because we have been using them for centuries together. So what are the cons or the negatives? They can't be revitalized. They are diminishing. Fossil fuels contribute to global warming, and we are hearing so much of debate on the global warming and the negative effects of that. And there is a challenge of breaking human habits of leaning onto these sources. We have got used to them, and they're also causing environmental pollution, which we know the negative impact of. Let's go on to the brighter side of energy sources, which is renewable energy. Renewable energy hopefully will not run out. Sun will remain there, wind will remain there, water will remain there, and biomass will be there. Maintenance requirements are lower because they are natural. They save money, hopefully into the future because the technology is improving. They have enormous number of health and environmental benefits, which I'll talk about and we know about. And there's a lower reliance on imported sources of energy. So renewable, low reliance of energy across countries which have wind, water, or sun. What are the cons? Currently, because it's an evolving source of energy, there are higher upfront or setup costs. Intermittency, because if you're depending on sun, then you have the summer season and the non-summer season. So therefore, the source may not be 12-month permanent source. Storage capabilities currently till we evolve technology. Sun energy can be produced. We are still working on the capabilities of storage. Geographic limitations, like I just told you, there are tropical countries, non-tropical countries. There are countries which are blessed with rivers and water resources. Not everyone is. Wind may not be a permanent feature across the months, across the seasons in all the countries. So these could be some of the negatives which we'll have to work around with in renewable energy. But what is for sure, ladies and gentlemen, is that green evolution is here. We had the green revolution earlier with plantation and food. Now we have the green energy evolution. And let's talk about that. Modern renewable energy has been a worldwide phenomenon for many decades, and especially since the mid 1900s or the 20th century, we have seen how hydro power has been abundantly encashed upon and is even today the #1 source of renewable energy. But come the 21st century, in the last 20 years, there's been a huge spike in the encashment of wind and solar sources of energy. Now I'm going to the green evolution, which I was talking about. Green evolution is here for the good. And like I was talking about, we have the hydro power, which is the #1 source. We also have the wind and solar, which in the last 20 years has caught up. This is a lighter slide which I have. Like we go for the colas and the orange drink and the lemon drink. Soon you'll have, do you want a wind-powered drink or a solar-powered drink or a geothermal drink or a biomass drink? So soon, there'll be a variety of natural-based drinks based on the natural energy sources. So that's the kind of evolution and social awareness which we need to create. No fossil fuel energy produced drinks. So that will encourage everything. Now let's come to some data sets. The top countries based on renewable energy production by gigawatts. The #1 country is, as we can see here, is China, 758 gigawatts. All sources put together. Then you have US, Brazil. India is at #4, and Russia is at #9. You can see that here. So these are the countries which have this capacity. And what is the energy consumption of renewable energy? China continues to be #1. US is at #2. You have India at #5, and Russia is way below. I'll come to that. So you have production on one side, and you also have the consumption. Germany has jumped up. Brazil has jumped up. Let's come to the breakup now. Hydropower generation, we have discussed, was the #1 source of renewable energy. Russia and India are ranked 5th and 6th in the ranking, which is pretty high. And therefore, there is a good interest of hydropower generation in Russia and India. Let's come to the wind power. In wind power, India is 4th and Russia is 10th. And China, United States and Germany are higher up the rank, maybe because there's better wind production in those countries. And now there's this lighter slide which says, what's a wind turbine's favorite color? It says blue, BLEW. Unless there is wind, you cannot have wind turbines and wind power. So therefore, let's have a blue revolution in the wind power, like you have a green revolution for overall renewable energy. Let's come to the solar power. And now this is, I think, a very, very interesting area. This has a capacity and a potential to give us energy much, much higher than any other source. And fortunately, we have India and Russia, which are gearing up the resources. India is ranked 5th currently, and Russia is at 10th as far as solar power generation is concerned. And we saw recently where we saw the French or the Paris Convention, where there was a spurt in the importance of solar power generation worldwide. And I think this is one of the most encouraging areas and sources of renewable energy. There is this lighter slide which makes you feel less guilty, and it says, the solar power chainsaw makes me feel less guilty about deforestation. So deforestation is a problem. Let us not cut trees the way we were doing very abundantly in the past, but this is a lighter statement here. Let's give you some data on India and renewable energy. Indian renewable energy sector is the 4th most attractive renewable energy market in the world. We just saw India is 4th in wind power, 5th in solar, and 5th in the generation of solar energy, and also the wind energy and water. As on April 30th, 2020, the installed renewable energy capacity stood at 87 gigawatts, out of which 34 was solar and 37 is wind. India is blessed with all the 3 sources of renewable energy. We are a tropical country. We have the sun and the sunlight in most part of the country for at least 9 months of the year. It's only the northern India where we have a typical winter for around 3 months. Wind is abundantly available in India. We have a huge coastline of around 7,500 kilometers. So that's a good source of wind energy there. And we also have more than 400 rivers, out of which we have 11 major rivers. And therefore, we have enough capacity or potential for hydro power generation. We still have a lot to do in India, but we have the potential to generate good renewable energy into the future. As a part of its Paris Agreement commitments, and we were a major and active participant, Government of India has set, we just saw in the previous slide, where we said we have a capacity of 87 gigawatts in renewable energy. We are wanting to go to 175 gigawatts. And I just saw a recent announcement by Indian government, which has said that we will try and cross 200 gigawatts by 2022. And by 2030, another 8 years down the line or 10 years from now, 40% is a commitment, but I believe Government of India is working on 55% of India's power needs coming from renewable energy sources, and the entire wattage going up to more than 400 gigawatts by 2030. Now that's a very ambitious and encouraging target if we actually come very close to or achieve that. Renewable energy we just saw is something India is working on. The market size we saw, we are wanting to go to 175 gigawatts plus in 2022. It has grown, so it's consistently grown. So we have shown the capacity to actually perform. And breakup of industry, this will interest us. Energy is used in industry, residential, commercial, agriculture, and others. In 2012, industry contributed to more than 40% of the energy consumption. And by 2030, we expect it to come down to around 30%, because residential and commercial from around 20-23% consumption today is actually going to go to close to 35% to 40% in the next 10 years time. So there's increasing urbanization, increasing income levels, and therefore there's going to be an increased demand for electricity in the residential and also in the commercial sector. So buildings, transportation, capital goods, infrastructure is driving the overall electricity consumption, and an increased mechanization and shift in the technology is also pushing the requirement for electricity. And with that, I come to a very important sector. Other than industry and transport and agriculture, which is prominent in India, the booming residential sector is another major consumption of energy, and the concept of sustainability is prominent, but it is no longer an option because it is the need of the hour, and we need to sustain energy, we need to sustain resources and conserve the resources and protect the environment, because you also have now legal obligations for that. I'm very happy to say that in India we have more than 899 LEED certified projects, leadership in energy and environmental design projects as on 2018, where we also have a plan to actually go to 10 billion square feet from the current 24.81 million. So we are talking of an exponential increase in the green building concept or the LEED buildings, and many frontline states, as mentioned here, all of us may not be aware of the states, are taking the lead in the LEED projects. There are 5 key parameters, as we know, for the LEED certification. They are saving energy, saving water, waste management, reducing the carbon footprint, and focusing on the health of the building's occupants. So basically, we are talking of having a green building. Now, this is not something which is alien to us in India, because the LEED acronym and the LEED definition may have come in today, but what we are having in India is a traditional concept of Vastu. In Vastu, we talk about consume less water, make optimal use of energy, conserve natural resources, generate less waste while providing healthier living spaces for its occupants. And you just have to now modernize this technology, modernize this concept, and now call it as a green building or a green revolution. So in India, it's just a matter of a perspective shift in definitions. Otherwise, as a concept, it's been there for centuries together. So Vastu aims to make harmonious buildings at times in tune with Mother Nature, so that humans inhabiting the buildings live a very well balanced and happy life. In Vastu, we basically talk about balancing the 5 elements of life. We know what they are: water, air, and earth, sun. So these are fire. These are the 5 elements. So we talk about balancing them. There is a history to it, and I'll take a minute or two to explain to you. What we call as a god, or whom we call as the creator of the universe, Lord Brahma, he actually created a being and sent him to earth and told him to go and live his life. Now he became a demon. He became a Frankenstein and started eating everything up. And all the other gods came to Lord Brahma and said, "See, what have you created? He's eating up everything on the earth." So Lord Brahma said, "Okay, I need your help." So he said, sent all the gods to actually pin down this demon. And he was pinned down. Lord Brahma went there, and thus the 8 gods which pinned him down become the 8 fundamental directions of Vastu: north, east, west, south, and then the combination north, east, northwest, southeast, southwest. And the god who was pinning down this demon basically rules that particular direction. And this demon said, "You created me. I am not the culprit." So Lord Brahma told him, "Okay, your name will be eternal as long as you behave yourself." And that's how came up this concept of Vastu. For example, northeast is for water, while southeast is for fire. So each component. East is basically the sun rising, so it's power. and the west is where you conserve the energy, and south is considered as not a so auspicious area. So in Vastu, there is a very scientific application of these principles, basically, which is a green concept. So in India, we have started working on green concept centuries back. We have seen our structures. In fact, when I actually look at the various structures in architecture, whether it was Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, or even the Tuscan and the Russian Kremlin structures or the chateaus of France, or the Gothic structure in Europe, all have been using conceptually and traditionally some scientific form of architecture, which we have forgotten over the years when we came into modern architecture. Even in India, we have very scientifically designed temples, malls, gurdwaras, churches, and also forts, churches, and gardens by the Dravidian, Mughal, Rajput, Sikh, and the Indus Valley, which was 2600 BC. So it's not as if these concepts were not there. We seem to have forgotten them. We need to revive them and formalize them. And that is exactly what we call as the green evolution of buildings. So green buildings are Vastu, but I don't know whether the millennials and the centennial generation actually would talk that way. That this light statement says, with the electronics and the mobiles, doing and ruling our lives, the statement says, I don't know how much about Vastu Shastra, but if my bed is away from my charging point, then it definitely is not good Vastu. So I think as interior designers, we also need to keep this concept in mind, that Vastu is an evolving concept. We have seen how wind, solar, biopower, and small hydro sector is ruling and coming up. I want to give this quick comparison. In India today, and in Indian rupees, I don't want to convert it. I'll just give you a quick check. $1 US is equivalent to around 70 Indian rupees. It could be a little here and there. The price of 1 kilowatt of energy, electricity in India today is rupees 6 per unit. And the projected cost of a solar kilowatt in 2030 will be 2 rupees, and wind power little higher than that, around 2.3 rupees. Now we are talking of a 1/3 cost of the renewable energy power unit as compared to the current electricity unit. Now that's the kind of revolution, that's the kind of evolution, and that's the kind of cost saving that we can talk about. And just imagine, with energy requirements tripling and quadrupling in the next decade, which India, because of its growing economy, is projecting, this 1/3 cost is going to be a big boon, not only by economics, but also by pollution and also by the green evolution that we are talking about. Now, this statement, with great power comes great electricity bill, is going to become redundant if our electricity costs come down by 1/3 or 1/4 in the next decade. Now, how are we sure that this is going to happen? It's because of a number of initiatives which are being taken. Let me jump to that. There is a robust demand, like I told you, from a 15,300 terawatts. We are expecting, this is what we are expecting in 2040, which is going to go up 3 times from what we have had in 2012, around 5,000 terawatts of power. This is in India, and this is going to be driven mainly by the real estate and transport sector. We saw a commitment of having 40% of our energy sources in 2030 through renewable, but we are working on 55%. So we have set a target which is higher than the 40%, which we are committed. We also have good investments which are coming in. We had around 9 billion which came in the last 20 years, and we are expecting 500 billion in renewable energy investment in the next decade or so. So you can see that there is going to be a good backup support even commercially. And government is also through policy supporting this renewable push. And we have seen how India was a dominant player in the Paris Agreement, and also how recently, and that was for solar energy, and how very recently with the Danish government, we have got into the wind power agreement. So Indian government and policy is also going to be supporting this. India also has a competitive advantage. India is ranked third on the EY Renewable Energy Country Attractive Index as of 2019, and we have one of the lowest capital costs per megawatt, especially for photovoltaic plants. And Government of India has ramped up its previous target, as I just mentioned, from 175 gigawatts to 225 gigawatts, and therefore there's a confidence that we can do that. With that, I come to the end of my presentation with an earnest request to all across the globe that there's a huge potential to encash on the renewable, safe, and relatively pollution-free renewable energy sources, especially solar, wind, and water. India is trying to do its bit. We have taken a major target for ourselves. Russia is working on it. I'm sure more and more countries will do that. Thank you so much for this opportunity to the organizers and all of you for your patient listening. Spasibo, namaskar, sat sri akal. Over to you.
Thank you very much. We're waiting for the questions from our participants. Dear colleagues, don't hesitate to ask our keynote speakers.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Thank you, Anastasia. Dr. Parmar, with your permission, can I ask a small question?
Yeah, sure.
So, you have mentioned that the future of energy is the renewable energy. Yes, we all know, but is there anything you could do or you could suggest us how to convince America to follow the same trade like the other world is doing? Because Mr. Trump is saying that he's not gonna agree on these things, and the Americans were not even wasting the resources, but actually they were using 9 times extra resources as compared to rest of the country.
Now, this is a very difficult question to answer because we are scientists and academicians and industrialists, and you have asked me a political question. That too, when America is going into the election phase. So I think we'll direct it to the next president, whoever the president is. For India, I can convince and give you the confidence. You have seen the numbers. Irrespective of which political party or which leader leads India, we have seen very favorable transformation from non-renewable to renewable energy in India. And we have also seen how it will also benefit us commercially and also socially by the reduction in global warming or Indian warming and pollution-free India. So in India, I'm very confident that the targets we have taken, in fact, we have enhanced the targets and we have announced it to the world. A clear indication that we mean business as far as adoption of renewable energy is concerned.
Thank you, Dr. Parmar. Thank you very much.